Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Today, you are going to be spending the next 45 minutes to an hour um, talking about the power of untaxable wealth. And this is a secret that the ultra rich have used for years. And this is something that is accessible to the average person, although you probably will do most of your work with folks that are in that upper 20% of the income bracket. We're going to get started pretty quick here. People are still logging in like crazy. So I'm going to just give you a quick little background. If you're not familiar with ECA marketing, we're one of the oldest and largest FMOs in the country. And our specialty is in fixed life and annuity business. And we work with thousands of agents all over the country and have a variety of unique programs. This happens to be one of those. So sit tight, enjoy the webinar, and we will open it up for questions at the end. So if you have any questions, you're free to type those into the toolbar anytime, and we'll try and address those in the Q&A session at the very end of the webinar. So let's get started. So if you read the email invite to this webinar, you probably saw this famous quote from Leona Helmsley: "We don't pay taxes, the little people pay taxes." She was a billionaire hoteler and real estate mogul. And one of the things that I think was kind of revealing in her quote, as offensive as it was to many, is that she really was kind of letting people in on the truth and how the ultra wealthy become ultra wealthy. And one of those secrets then is that they don't pay taxes. And that's been reinforced over the years by many others. Recently, of course, by the 45th president of the United States, where there was some controversy about him not paying taxes or not paying much taxes or paying very little taxes. And of course, he argued that that the money would be squandered if it went to the government anyways. But I think this is characteristic, and these are just a couple of examples, but there are many, many others among the super wealthy class that have bragged about it over the years, that they don't pay taxes and that they use it after offshore tax havens and a variety of different methods within the tax code to not have to pay taxes. And so this is a strategy that's obviously very significant because to wealth building, because the super wealthy have said this over and over again over many decades. And it's a strategy that seems to be largely overlooked by the middle class or upper middle class, working class folks, business owners, as a critical element to building wealth, not just accumulating without regard to taxes, but having a very keen focus on how do we build wealth with without having to be taxed down the road. So why building wealth without regard to taxes is a tax trap? There's a bunch of different reasons why, but probably the first and foremost is that Congress is unpredictable. They're constantly changing the rules of the game. So as you're saving, even if it's in a qualified government plan, because the rules of the game can change at any time, and Congress really can't be relied on to keep any promises they make to the people, because that could change in the next congressional election, the next presidential election, you name it. It's a moving target, and it's such a moving target that it can't be relied on as a practical long-term method for accumulation, especially if you're, again, paying heed to the advice of these ultra wealthy, that not paying taxes was a critical component to their ability to amass this enormous sums of wealth. So here we already know that the current Trump tax cuts are set to expire in 2025, very likely sooner than that. And of course, this is even interesting because a lot of people aren't considering this, but there are things within the tax code that joint filers with just $40,000 of Social Security benefits and as little as $28,000 of other income, which is, I would assume, pretty common, at least in that upper 20% for sure, that they can find themselves paying up to 185% of the normal marginal tax rate for their income level. So that's pretty punitive for sure, and quite a stunning negative impact. And if you didn't plan for this, that's a serious trap that you're locked in, and that'll affect the quality of your life in retirement. So let's talk a little bit about some of the additional trends that are working against taxpayers in that top 20%. First and foremost, the top 20% of households already pay 88.1% of federal income taxes and 69% of total federal taxes. And we have a variety of proposals that have been bandied about in Congress recently under the current Congress and administration. There's even proposals to have up to a 70% top federal income tax rate. So this top 20% are already paying this much. The impact of a tax change like this could be quite catastrophic for the wealth of those folks in that upper tier. Now, some trends that might actually make some of this actually possible, and that might get through Congress even, some sort of a proposal like that where they do raise that top marginal tax rate for the higher income earners, is that US debt per capita has been surging in the last, since COVID really. It's obviously been on a pretty steep curve, but just recently in the last couple of years here now, we've seen the per capita debt go from 69,000 to 82,000 per person in the United States. Total US public and private debt has grown dramatically since the 80s, as you can see, where it was 4.6 trillion to, just last year reaching 81 trillion. So if we look at that as a percentage of debt to GDP, it's starting to get a little scary, where we're looking at about 387% of GDP when we look at all US public and private debt. A huge chunk of that, of course, is the government. Total net increase in total US public and private debt versus the net increase in GDP. So this is also kind of an alarming statistic, in that we can see that, even in recent years, the debt to GDP ratio wasn't all that unreasonable. There was some GDP there to kind of back up this debt. Now it's just completely off the rails in 2020. So now we're looking at $14 of debt to $1 of GDP between. This is, of course, all public and private debt, but a lot of that was public debt that was added on in the last couple of years here. And they're still looking to add more. I mean, there's an infrastructure bill right now and making its way through Congress that could add an additional $1 trillion+ of spending at the federal level. So where that ratio ends up, who knows? But that ratio to GDP is pretty staggering, and especially if there's a potential for additional lockdowns with COVID coming. That's also sort of being discussed, at least at the federal level. We'll see what happens. I think there are a couple of states that are already maybe even enacting some stuff like that. So that's going to have an adverse effect on GDP, and of course that GDP to debt ratio. So what's the government to do when this stuff gets so out of whack, when the GDP is plummeting or declining and the national debt is exploding? And what impact does that even have on inflation? Of course, we're seeing inflation as well, not just pressure to raise taxes. So we can see that this annual budget deficit of over 4.5 trillion and growing, this national debt of 28 trillion and growing by the trillion, it seems like, depending on what makes its way through Congress. And 86 trillion in unfunded liabilities. There's a ton of pressure to raise taxes and to go after money that's maybe already in a tax deferred status, because that's money that's yet to be taxed, and the government's looking at that thinking, hey, we can solve a lot of this fiscal problem by accessing those dollars, right? So another problem that's layered on top of this is that tax revenues at the federal, state, and local level are actually down between 5 and 8% and are expected to stay that way for the next several years as a result of COVID being kind of a slow recovery. Many businesses that had failed due to the lockdowns and maybe haven't restarted. So, which begs the question, are the current tax rates where they're at right now actually in a position where we're going to see potentially not only the highest marginal tax rates go up to much more historic levels, and we might also see the lowest marginal tax rates go up as well. So again, I think the case is there that there's a significant amount of pressure. If your clients haven't been paying attention to this, and they probably haven't, they're not paying too close attention to any of this kind of stuff. They may not realize that their qualified savings or any taxable savings are in jeopardy of becoming a target of government tax increases at some stage, maybe in the very near future here. So what will the government do? That's a great question. Well, we kind of had the answer before even this election happened.
And folks, on day one, I will move to eliminate Trump's tax cuts as well for the super wealthy.
So that hasn't happened yet, but that is definitely on the back burner in Congress. And as I mentioned, you know, all the spending is also having an impact on inflation. So, you know, what's a person to do when bond yields are at historic lows, money markets, most fixed income stuff is really at historic lows? How is somebody to keep up with, you know, the rate of inflation that's skyrocketing in recent months, largely due to this massive fiscal, you know, runaway train that's just growing like crazy with all the COVID bailouts. So that's a tough solution, right? What do we do with that? How do we help somebody here? And then we're also dealing with a market that may be at the peak of its, you know, cycle. So, you know, piling into the stock market right now may not be the wise choice for most people, but that's where a lot of their 401k or other savings are. So what will happen with tax rates? Great question. Something like I said to think about here is that retirement assets are in that $29 trillion range. We also saw that the national debt right now currently is about 29 trillion as well, not including the unfunded liabilities. That begs the question, will qualified plan savings actually be safe? Well, they've been talking about this too, as it turns out. The IMF, going way back into 2013, actually wrote a paper called Taxing Times, and they actually recommended wealth confiscation of American wealth held in 401ks, IRAs, and even non-qualified investment accounts in order to stabilize the global bond markets. This was as recent as 2013. These things are slow to move forward typically. And like even Biden's promise to eliminate the Trump tax cuts on day one, you know, that's still kind of stalled in Congress, but they're working to gain steam to get support for that. So could the IMF have a plan for your 401k? Well, it sure seems like they do, and your other wealth. What about Congress? Because that's really where it counts. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's where the legislation is drafted. Well, back in the Obama administration, there was a lady that did a presentation in front of Congress. There was a congressional hearing. The House Committee on Education and Labor brought this. Teresa Ghilarducci, a professor of economic policy and analysis, to talk about this. And she actually proposed that the government eliminate tax breaks for the 401k. We're starting to hear that resurface again, and similar retirement accounts, so IRAs possibly, and confiscate workers' retirement plan accounts and convert them to universal guaranteed retirement accounts, or GRAs. Now, this is something that the media has covered a little bit, but not much. So your average consumer isn't aware of this at all. That this has been talked about for some time. It's back again. They're talking about it, and we actually have a much worse situation today in terms of the debt scenario. So the government is kind of eyeing this stuff. And by the way, these ideas are not new. This is something that's happened in other countries. So this very kind of proposal that they're recommending, this guaranteed retirement account concept, where they confiscate things like 401ks and private investment accounts, that sort of thing. This has happened in other countries. Recently, in the last 2 or 3 decades, we've seen it happen in many countries in Central and South America. So just be aware that these ideas are not new. They've been used and deployed by governments elsewhere in recent years. So how long has Congress been talking about this? Well, this goes back actually to 2008. So this is actually you can get the transcript of her hearing, but this was October 7th of 2008. And did she ever go away? Well, that's a great question, because here's an article by the American Thinker referring to her talking about this again back in 2010. So just a couple years later, here she is again back in 2015 in USA Today. Here she is again in the New York Times in 2015. Here she is again in 2017. And she's not going away, trust me. And the government loves this idea just because it solves the national debt fiasco that currently exists. So when will qualified plan savings be targeted? Well, they're already a target. Will any of this ever come to fruition? We don't know. I mean, who knows? That's up to the political will of the people, I guess, and their representatives. But clearly, there's interest in going after these dollars. And if this stuff were to pass, more than likely you'll have very little time to react in terms of repositioning your assets. You'll sort of just get stuck in a trap and have little or no control over it, which is what we've seen in the other countries where something similar had been deployed. Will there be a major stock market correction? Well, who knows? I'm going to say the tea leaves are that we're at least nearing the end of this current bull market cycle. It's largely seems to be propped up by the Federal Reserve and money printing. But let's just listen to what billionaire investor, let's see here if I can get it to play here, Jim Rogers has to say.
Jim, either of those markets right now. You mentioned the stock market bubble. This is something we've talked for.
Let me just try and get it to the right.
It's the same way in the end. And in the end, of course, it pops. And a lot of people lose a lot of money. What kind of correction could you see? 40%, 50%, 30%? What type? No, this time, in 2008, we had a serious financial problem in the markets because of too much debt. Daniela, since 2008, the debt has gone up huge amounts everywhere, all over the world. The debt is the highest in recorded history. The next bear market is going to be the worst in my lifetime and the worst in your lifetime. 50s, 60s. I mean, some stocks will go down to 80 or 90%. That's what always happens. I mean, it's not some kind of doomsday. It's just the way these things work. It's just like telling you that this is a bubble, a classic bubble developing. It's the same that's happened many times. Go back and read about it. And they always end the same way. I mean, we're not making we're making new history, but we're not inventing the wheel here. We're not inventing bubbles. We're not inventing pops. They've always popped. This gas that alluded to a huge April.
So Jim Rogers thinks there's obviously a bubble forming and that there's likely going to be a massive correction. He even said that the biggest in his lifetime. So that now leads us to the question is, what if there's a way to address all of these concerns for your clients in a single solution? And that would be the inflation concern, the potential for confiscation of savings and making that out of the reach of the government, whether that's qualified or non-qualified, market corrections or volatility. And the ultimate solution really is to begin positioning your wealth so that it is in an untaxable position. And that's becoming untaxable now, not later, not when you don't have a chance to respond. So my goal for the rest of this webinar here is really to kind of show you that there's a way to create untaxable wealth for your clients while reducing market volatility, that confiscation risk we can minimize, and make the asset invisible to the government for all practical purposes in many different ways. And that the only way to make this wealth invisible to the government without giving up performance, liquidity, control, while gaining safety is a proprietary case design needed to make that all work, we call solely. So if you stick around to the end, we'll talk a little bit about what it takes to get access to all this stuff and how you can learn about it. It is a proprietary program, so we'll make a little offer at the end for you that I think you'll find worthwhile. What makes this different is that this is a proprietary platform. This is not an off-the-shelf type of solution that you can get anywhere. And so really there's 3 secrets to untaxable wealth. First, obviously, is to use some sort of a vehicle to get your savings legally out of the reaches of the IRS and basically makes them, for all practical purposes, invisible. Secret number 2 is to use a proprietary solution, and this proprietary solution is one that doesn't sacrifice performance. So we'll talk a little bit about that one in the next couple of slides here, but this is significant because this gives you a competitive advantage. It also overcomes a lot of the concerns or objections that people might have to using off the shelf or similar type solutions that might be available. And untaxable wealth secret number 3, TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA. If you're not familiar with those, these are significant milestones in the life insurance tax code. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go here. So Ed Slott has had some things to say about this, and I agree with him. You can't rely on Congress to keep their word. So you must be proactive and take steps to keep more of your money. To pay as little tax as possible along the way, you need to turn taxable accounts into tax-free accounts. Move your money from accounts that I call forever tax to ones that are never tax. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't follow this advice. They don't even necessarily know it's even possible. So I think the idea, just the very idea that you can be in a position that you can never be taxed again on your money, your wealth, is foreign to a lot of consumers. They don't know that this is even a solution that's available to them. So untaxable wealth secret number 2, use a proprietary case design. And I'm going to add in that crushes the competition, because honestly, a proprietary case design that doesn't crush the competition isn't really worth taking a look at, right? So let's take a look and see what this is all about. I'm going to start off by showing you a sample illustration here. This is from the #1 selling index universal life carrier out there right now. And just take a quick note here of how we funded this. So this is a $25,000 a year going in, max funded design. So, minimum non-MEC death benefit that we can obtain relative to the 7-pay rules here. Taking income in year 16. This is giving us a $21,308 annual income as illustrated a $392,000 death benefit. This is the top selling IUL in the market right now, according to LIMRA, and probably one of the best illustrating ones currently as well. Here's what we can do by comparison with the solely structure in this proprietary case design. So you'll see the same funding pattern, same 55 male standard scenario, income still starting at age or after 16, in year 16. But you'll note that we start off at 45,000 a year. You'll note that the death benefit is actually substantially larger. And you'll also note that the income increases over time. So there is a secret sauce to all of this to make this work. It's a relatively modest risk design, maybe what I would consider low risk, certainly lower risk than having your assets exposed to market volatility by being in an actual stock market investment or stocks or mutual funds. In any case, let me just go back a slide real quick just so you can see that again. We're looking at 21,308 with a $392,000 death benefit. Cash value happens to be 293 versus in this proprietary program, what we can do with the exact same funding, initial income starting at 45,000, death benefit at the same time that income is beginning here of about 816, and the account value at 251,000. So huge difference, huge competitive advantage, overcomes a lot of the objections to fixed index products because often people feel like they're sacrificing performance for all the benefits that come with the tax advantages, the risk aversion because of the index crediting method. So just know that this is not an off-the-shelf solution. This is a proprietary design. And there's a lot of benefits to it for the client. Dramatically better performance than any off-the-shelf IUL policy designed for either income or death benefit. Gives you the benefits of premium finance with none of the hassles. No longer exposed to volatile markets because it's an index product. Neutralize the negative impact with the Secure Act. Eliminates unwanted RMDs with one of the designs. Positions your client's qualified or non-qualified savings so it's legally invisible to the IRS. And there's a bunch of different modules. We're not going to get into all of this right now, but I just wanted to cover quickly. You know, there's an optimized death benefit design. There's an employer-sponsored tax-free version, tax-free retirement version. There's an IRA conversion strategy. There's an annuity conversion strategy. There's just a standard non-qualified tax-free retirement strategy. There's what we call a tax financing strategy. And of course, we can even do premium finance with this. So with a twist, with a lot less risk and without having external collateral. So this gives you a way to gain a competitive advantage by positioning your business as you start talking about this type of solution to your clients as an advisor that helps people become untaxable. And you can attract new high income and wealthy prospects by putting them into a solution like this that then they do become untaxable. And let's quickly touch on secret number 3 here, TEFRA, DEFRA, and TAMRA. These are all the laws that were passed in the 80s that sort of modified the unlimited tax shelter that existed at the time within life insurance that was being exploited by the wealthy. And Congress said, hey, you know, this is a little too juicy for our liking. We're going to rein this in just a bit. And so these laws were passed to kind of make life insurance less attractive in terms of tax shelter. But it turns out it's still the best tax shelter in the tax code. And once again, let's refer to what Ed Slatt has to say about this. He says, as a tax advisor who doesn't sell life insurance or any financial product, the tax exemption for life insurance benefits is one of the single biggest pluses in the tax code, and most people don't take advantage of it. which is sad. You know, people are just unfortunately putting themselves into a position where they're going to have their assets taxed at a rate that is unexpected and unexpectedly higher than, especially if we're dealing with the more affluent clients that have just maxed out their 401ks, they're qualified plan heavy, and they're still sitting in these things at the peak of a market that may be a bubble. What to do, right? Well, the next steps. So hopefully in the last 30 minutes or so here, you at least found this discussion interesting, and interesting points of discussion that you can have with your clients. Of course, we can't cover everything in the 30 minutes that we have allocated for this discussion. So we have a special offer to help kind of get you up to speed on everything that you can take this and put this in front of your clients and have that competitive advantage when you're showing cash value life insurance and showing them strategies for repositioning taxable to untaxable. So selling high target premium life cases is really what this is all about. And that's easy to do when you're repositioning the taxable into an untaxable position. It gives you a way to differentiate from the competition. It gets you a way to serve a high value market. It gives an irresistible offer to your clients. And of course, we have a unique solution that they're not going to find anywhere else but here. And so let's talk a little bit about what you're going to get. If that's all right with you, we have a program all packaged up called the Solely Solution. It's a tutorial that walks you through exactly what this is, how to position it, how to sell it. And we also have, along with that, 12 monthly mastermind calls, unlimited custom AI created, artificial intelligence created presentations and case designs go along with that. That's the value of everything that we're offering today. And this has worked for some of our best agents to sell some of their largest cases ever in the last several years. We've had agents close the largest case they've ever closed in their career using these strategies. It's worked well for retirement income planning agents that feel like they need to help their clients diversify their tax positioning because they may be almost 100% taxable. In fact, most cases, most people are currently positioned where virtually 100% of their savings and retirement assets are 100% taxable. Registered reps that work with affluent business owners, we've helped those folks who don't really do life insurance business get into this space, helping show solutions that maybe were outside the box for them and dramatically improve their income. So again, this is all the stuff you get. We're going to throw in a bonus for anybody that decides to take advantage of this offer by 4 p.m. And that is what we call cracking the code virtual summits. There's a few things that were part of that. We had 3 different virtual summits. Some of these included, keynote speakers like Van Miller, Bernie D'Souza, and others, some of the top minds in the life insurance industry. We have one that's called Cracking the IUL Code 2. If you haven't sold IUL before or you're really looking to get more into that market, this is a great tutorial to really get up to speed on what the IUL market's all about. Cracking the Prospecting Code. This is a lot about how to position and sell with some of the very applicable stuff that you can do today that's very simple. And then cracking the LTC code. This is asset-based life insurance or asset-based long-term care that uses a life insurance chassis to solve the long-term care problem. And so this is a growing issue and concern for many people too. A lot of times they're interested in these solutions because they incorporate some sort of chronic illness or long-term care benefit along with having this untaxable positioning. So again, let's just walk through everything you're going to get, including the bonuses. And really, if all this did was help you add that one supersized IUL case a year, a quarter, a month, would it be worth it? If you were able to go back to your existing client base and motivate them to actually start to do something to reposition themselves into a much safer ground. So in the event of, more massive correction in the stock market, more inflation or rising inflation, or potentially proposals for higher taxes or even confiscation of qualified plans. This gives you a blue ocean to practically shut out your competition. It can give you that clear path to the top of the table if you haven't already been there. Would that be worth at least checking this out? What if it landed you that motivated CPA referral partner where you're helping show them a unique way to use the life insurance regulations and what's in the IRS code and the treatment of life insurance as a tax shelter to help those clients actually get in a better position as well and solve their tax problems better. So what's an opportunity like this worth to you? One case we've seen, the average cases are probably somewhere between $60,000 and $100,000 target, much higher than the industry average. It can easily open the door to a CPA referral partner because you're not showing up with the same old. And so the next steps, if this sounds interesting to you, is to take action now because it doesn't cost a darn thing. You can get access to all that for free. There's a couple of minor requirements that we have, an NDA and some carrier contracting, but you can get access to this membership for $0 and get those bonuses if you enroll by 4 p.m. So all you really need to do is call our front desk at 800-356-4189 and ask for the Solely Solution offer. That's 800-356-4189. Ask for the Solely Solution offer. And at this point, we're going to open it up for Q&A in case there are any questions here, since we're about 40 minutes into the webinar right now. Let me pull out the questions here. Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, there's some good points here from Dan. The infrastructure plan that's also possibly on the table here to really explode the debt even further, which is another $3.5 trillion. So who knows where the the debt stops at this thing. Okay, so questions are starting to come in. I guess, you've got nothing to lose. You've got a lot to gain. Getting access to this program is proprietary, through ECA marketing. And we've had so many agents have so much success with this. I mean, I can tell you, there are groups currently right now that are probably, I mean, they're helping so many agents reach, double, triple their income, within months of starting to present this stuff to their clients. So here's a good question. Can whole life be used for this program? This is not a whole life program. So Sam, thanks for the question. This is not whole life. There's a reason for that. There are whole life solutions that you can use that, have the same problems that off the shelf products do, which is, returns that aren't very exciting. You name it. Can this be used as part of a split dollar plan, Keith? Yes, absolutely. If you're not familiar with us, it's ECA Marketing, E as in Edward, C as in Charles, A as in Apple. It's actually in the initials of one of the founders of the company, Elliot Cobb. So Elliot Cobb and Associates, I believe, is what the original ECA stood for. But ECA Marketing, yeah, we're around about 35 years now, probably closing in on a 2 billion plus size firm, and we're based here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So if you're not familiar with us, we offer pretty much carrier contracts from almost any company in the industry, as well as some unique proprietary solutions like this. And periodically we have our own proprietary annuities as well. So John, hopefully that answers your question. If you have more questions about ECA, I would just get on the phone, talk to one of our wholesalers. We've got 30 or so wholesalers here. So this begs the question, and I was hoping somebody would ask this: Is there marketing material to contact prospects? So yes, as a matter of fact, there's a couple of great programs that we have available that if you don't have the client base to go back to currently and are looking for new prospects to reach out to, we have marketing platforms that we can show you how to get in front of qualified business owners, that affluent person that's in that top 20%, of income or wealth, and that are going to be receptive to learning about this stuff. And so, yeah, my suggestion is, contact your ECA marketer here by calling 800-356-4189. If they're not available right now, because we probably are getting a bunch of phone calls from you guys, we had, almost 300 people register for this webinar. So I just want to make sure, you guys get addressed, your questions addressed here while we can, because our marketers might be a little busy and it might take them a bit to get back to you. As our front desk might even you might be even getting a busy signal. Sometimes that happens when we do these webinars. We haven't done one of these in quite a while, and made this offer for quite some time. So we're making it again. And I don't know when we will make it again, but we are making it right now. So now is your chance to be part of this by calling 800-356-4189. Ask for your internal wholesaler and ask for the solely solution offer. If you do have questions about, getting in front of qualified prospects, your marketer will have some information on how to get preset appointments or folks on your calendar that are new and a new pipeline for you. We're not really going to cover that in detail today, but we have two separate programs that help you get in front of these qualified folks. They're both working really well. We're on pace, this year to probably do between 20 and $30 million in target in just this strategy alone. Juan, great question. Can the funds in a variable annuity be used for the solely strategy? There are ways to do that. Absolutely. There's a what we call an annuity conversion strategy that actually can help show somebody how to take that variable annuity and convert that into a non-taxable solely strategy. Also, great question as far as the IUL. There's actually a few companies that we can use. That does change periodically, which one performs the best and the best in class and the best design. But you'll, when you sign the NDA, you'll actually get contracting along with that with the current carrier that we're mostly using, although that's not the only one. So let's see, questions are still coming in here. Great. Yeah. So if you've got currently situations that you have you'd like to run by one of our wholesalers because their money is in something that's maybe at risk, is taxable, and you want to get them kind of moving into something that puts them in a better position, call our marketers. They can get you a case design once we get you set up with this. Let's see what else is coming in here. Carriers available in New York. There are New York options, yes. They may be different from time to time just because, as you know, in New York, product availability can vary from the rest of the country and features and stuff as well. So. Well, I think I've managed to address most of these questions. If you still have any questions, I'll make one last call for questions before. Otherwise, you know, you got nothing to lose and everything to gain, definitely take advantage of what we've got to offer here. This is a unique partnership that we have with this proprietary program, and you know, a bunch of tools to help you get up to speed on deploying this. Oh, more questions coming in here. John, good question. What if somebody's uninsurable for life insurance? Is there a way to do something with this? Yeah, there are actually strategies we have when somebody is uninsurable. It may or may not always work, you know, but we do have alternative approaches that we can use if somebody is uninsurable, where they can still deploy this very strategy. So, well, I want to thank everybody for your close attention over the last 45 minutes here. Really appreciate you attending the webinar. I really encourage you to take advantage of this since it is free, and it's got a bunch of great tools that you can really help to transform your practice with. And like I said, if you still don't have, if you're not really in a position to go back to existing clients because you just don't have the right client base or whatever that may be, we also have a couple of great programs available that, you know, can help you get in front of qualified prospects as well for these types of solutions. So I am going to wrap it up for today. If you have anything else you need though, be sure to either contact me directly. My name is Jeff Thompson. You can reach me through that same 800-356-4189. Have them just put you into my voicemail and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. If you had some additional questions, otherwise be sure to talk to whoever your assigned marketer is, and they'll be able to support you in getting you started. Thanks so much and have a great day, everyone.